for you?
My family's there.
How many people are there? Your dad? Who else is there?
My dad, my uncle, my cousins.
Where's he at right now, ma'am?
He's on the porch right now.
He's on the porch.
As chilling as that phone call sounds, trust me, you won't believe the wild twist that comes next.
It is a horrifying crime that has a small South Georgia community on edge. Who's responsible for the deaths of 8 people in a Glynn County home?
This is the devastating story of the Heinze family. Around 8:15 in the morning on August 29, 2009, police received a frantic 911 call from a 22-year-old man named Guy Heinze Jr. He claimed that his whole family had been murdered. When officers arrived at the trailer park, what they found was beyond horrific. 7 people already dead, and 2 others barely clinging to life. Sadly, one of the injured 19-year-old, Michael Toller, who had Down syndrome, passed away the very next day. Police later revealed the victims had been beaten with some kind of heavy, blunt object, and they suspected 3 people were behind this shocking and brutal attack. The case rocked the community and quickly grabbed headlines worldwide, earning the grim title of the worst mass murder in Georgia's history. But the real question that haunts everyone is, who could be so cold-hearted to do something this horrific to a family of 9? Now, when tragedies like this strike, especially within families, the one person left standing often becomes the center of suspicion. It's a bitter reality, one that walks a fine line between the search for justice and the human need to make sense of the unthinkable. In this case, that spotlight fell squarely on Guy Heinze Jr. Despite sounding absolutely broken, panicked, breathless, and devastated on that haunting 911 call, law enforcement couldn't immediately rule him out. In fact, to many investigators, something about his story didn't sit quite right. But before you jump to conclusions or clear his name entirely, don't close your tabs or lock your phone just yet. That phone call wasn't just a plea for help. It became the emotional backbone of this entire case. But to really understand what happened that day, we have to rewind the clock just a little. Thanks to handwritten statements provided by his partner Jody, along with a patchwork of surveillance footage and witness testimonies, we're able to stitch together a rare, intimate glimpse into Guy's final hours before the horror inside that trailer unfolded. Keep in mind, Guy didn't have a working cell phone at that time, so tracking precise times is difficult. And when you're recalling moments from a day soaked in trauma, memories blur, time warps, emotions twist the edges of every detail. But even with that, his story offers a chilling timeline that helps us piece together a narrative of what really might have happened. Now, Guy's day started like many others, early and routine. Around 7 a.m., he woke up and got ready for work in the trailer park, where he lived with his large, blended family. The trailer was crowded, often filled with as many as 13 people on any given night. It wasn't fancy, but it was home. One of the key people in that trailer home was Russell Toller Sr., a 44-year-old father doing his best to keep his family safe and steady. He wasn't Guy Heinze Jr.'s father, but he and Guy's dad, Heinze Sr., were longtime friends. Even though they weren't related by blood, the two families shared the trailer to help each other out, both emotionally and financially. Russell Sr. was the kind of man others could count on. He had a tough, no-nonsense attitude, but deep down, he was fiercely protective of the people he loved. His son, Russell Toller Jr., was only 20 at the time. He didn't talk much and liked to stay in the background, but those who knew him said he was always respectful and stood by his family no matter what. Chrissy Toller, also 20, was Russell Sr.'s daughter and the mother of a young son. She lived in the trailer with her 3-year-old boy, Byron Jimerson, the only one who would survive the brutal attack. Chrissy's younger sister, Michelle Toller, was only 15. Bright, energetic, and full of promise, Michelle was still figuring out who she wanted to become. Then there was Michael Toller, Chrissy's other brother, who was 19 years old and lived with Down syndrome. Michael had endured multiple surgeries throughout his life, but never let that dim his spirit. According to neighbors, he was sometimes loud, but always full of life, energetic, smiling, and constantly moving. His presence brought a unique joy to the home, and everyone who met him remembered his laughter. Also living in the trailer was Brenda Flanagan, a 49-year-old close family friend. She wasn't a blood relative, but she was a constant presence in their lives, someone who helped out and had been around for years. Alongside her was Joseph West, age 30, another longtime friend of the family who often stayed over and shared meals, laughs, and the daily ups and downs of life with them. And finally, there was Guy Heinze Jr., 45 years old, Guy Jr.'s father. Despite their complicated relationship, there was no denying the bond between father and son. Guy Sr. had a history of health problems and some legal trouble, but to his son, he was still family. He was still Dad. Altogether, they formed a tight, if sometimes chaotic, household, tied together by blood, love, and shared struggles. Now, as for Guy Jr., every morning he met his boss, Rich, at the entrance of the trailer park where he lived, and Rich would give him a ride to their construction job. Guy was working on building a house somewhere in Georgia, and this was just another normal Friday for him. Later that morning, around 11:30 or noon, Guy and his colleagues met with a contractor, and after that, Rich dropped Guy and his friend Zach off at Zach's apartment. The plan was simple: chill, relax, and maybe go out to a bar later. Around lunchtime, Guy and Zach went out to eat, and then they went back to Zach's place to smoke some weed. To keep things clear, we'll just say substances here, since the video content could get flagged otherwise. After their little break, they headed to a golf clothing store to pick out some outfits for the night. Simple plans, but a typical day for these guys. Later that afternoon, Guy happened to bump into his brother Tyler near a McDonald's, and this moment turned out to be pretty important in the timeline. It's worth noting that Tyler didn't live in the same trailer as Guy. Still, the two brothers were very close. Tyler invited Guy to come hang out at the hotel, where he and a few friends were staying later that evening. Around that time, Guy called up Chrissy Toller and her boyfriend Joe, asking them to bring over some substances. Joe, who was known to be involved in selling, had some on hand and showed up about 30 minutes later. After that, they all went back to New Hope, the trailer park where Guy's family lived. According to Guy, everyone was still there when he arrived, and nothing seemed strange or unusual. He took a quick shower, shaved his head, and spent a bit of time at the trailer. Then he got a call from Russell Jr., who needed help fixing a battery cable on a car at a nearby motel. So Guy left around 9 in the evening to go help out. He ended up spending some time there, helping with the car and hanging out with Russell Jr.'s girlfriend and her kids. On their way back, Guy stopped by a store where a woman working the sandwich shop confirmed she saw him at that time, which is a crucial piece of evidence. When they got back to the trailer, everyone was still there. Later, Guy borrowed Russell Jr.'s car to visit a girl named Summer, who had given him her number earlier. But when he got there, he got cold feet, feeling too out of it to see her. So instead, he went to a substance dealer's place and then headed to Barrington Park, a quiet spot he knew well where he could smoke in peace away from any police. He spent about 2 hours there under a tree, just chilling, though again he wasn't sure of the exact time since it was dark and he had no watch. After that, he tried to visit Tyler at the hotel again, but no one answered the door. One of the most important confirmations of Guy's story comes from surveillance footage at Parker's convenience store near the pier, where video showed him around 5:36 a.m. This evidence helped support the timeline Guy gave during his trial and added weight to his version of events. After that, Guy finally met up with Tyler and they spent some time together before dropping off Tyler's girlfriend and friend, grabbing food at a place called the Huddle House. And then Guy decided it was time to head back to New Hope. It was early Saturday morning now, and around 8 a.m., Guy arrived at the trailer. The moment everything changed. What he found inside was beyond horrifying. The scene was gruesome and heartbreaking, and in a recording from prison, Guy described the shock and horror of what he saw when he walked in. He talked about Michael, who was still barely breathing on the bed, and how he ran outside screaming for help. A neighbor named Peggy was there, and she was the one who called 911.
911, where's your emergency?
New Hope Plantation, Highway 17 North.
Okay, by New Hope, what's going on, ma'am?
There's a kid, guy just came home and his whole family is dead. He's kind of hysterical. I can't understand. I haven't gone over there yet.
Okay, tell me what the address is. Try and get that address for me.
140, 145, 140, and it's around to the backside.
New Hope Plantation?
Yes, ma'am. He just came screaming over up to my dog. My dog will bite. He's got a dog out there too that on the porch that may bite. I'm going to have to try to contain him. This is Guy. I don't know what his last name is. He said his dad is dead. Rusty's dead. He said everybody's dead. I know it's a house full of people that live there.
Okay. What's his name?
He's freaking out. It's Guy.
Guy, what's his last name?
Guy, what's your last name? What's your last name, honey? Huh? Yeah, here, talk to him. I just got home, my whole family's dead.
Okay, tell me what's going on, sir. What?
I just got home from, I was out last night, I got home just now, and everybody's dead. I was my dad's dead.
How many people are there?
There's like 6, my whole family's dead.
Okay.
It looks like they've been beaten to death. I don't know, man.
Okay.
I don't know what to do, man.
Okay. Take a deep breath. Vic, I'm coming for you. Just stay on the line with me, okay?
Okay.
Okay, get him out. They're coming for you.
My family's dead.
How many people are there? Your dad? Who else is there?
My dad, my uncle, my cousins.
Where's he at right now, ma'am?
He's on the porch right now.
He's on the porch.
Uh-huh.
And fire and whatnot at that moment.
I'm still 911. I haven't gotten off the phone with him.
I'm going to say, is it okay if I stay on the line with you, ma'am, until they get there?
Okay, here's a...
Okay.
My name is Mike. I'm maintenance out here.
Okay, what's going on, Mike?
The guy that lives 2 doors down from me, his name is Guy Jr. I don't know his last name. He said his whole family's dead in here in the trailer.
Okay.
I'm standing right here in front of the trailer. I'm afraid to go in there.
Yeah, no one should go in right now.
Okay, I called the manager. She's supposed to be over there in a minute.
Okay, yeah, we have everyone en route for you. We've got fire, EMS, and police coming to you. But I do want to stay on the line with somebody.
She said, yeah, tell him to hurry. Do you think Michael's still alive?
Someone's still alive?
Is Mike still breathing? I can't go in there.
Who's still alive? Which person?
He's a young man. He's got Down syndrome.
Okay.
Now, given the detailed timeline and the surveillance footage that perfectly matched Guy Heinze Jr.'s own statements, you'd naturally think he'd be cleared of suspicion, right? That the evidence would prove he had nothing to do with this horrific crime. Well, guess what? Despite all that, Guy became the one and only suspect in a case that shocked everyone. This was especially surprising because initially, even the police themselves admitted that it was likely more than one person involved. At least 3 people had to have taken part in the attack. After all, how could a single man violently and silently beat 8 people in such a cramped trailer without anyone hearing or stopping him? Yet somehow that's exactly what the authorities came to believe. And it all started because of that 911 call. To really understand how Guy was convicted, here's what happened. When he walked up to the trailer door that day, he noticed it was unlocked. Not unusual, since the family often left it that way. Right there, just inside the doorway, was his father, Guy Heinze Jr., motionless and drenched in blood. His body was twisted still and horrifyingly disfigured. Guy froze. His stomach dropped. His mind couldn't process what his eyes were seeing. His dad's face, it didn't even look human anymore. Blood was splattered everywhere. The silence was chilling, and before he could even collect his thoughts, something inside him snapped. Panic, fear, disbelief. He started running through the trailer, calling out, checking rooms, hoping this was some sick nightmare. But it only got worse. Every room he entered was straight out of a horror film. The whole Toller family was scattered across beds and floors, each one beaten beyond recognition. Some were slumped awkwardly, some halfway off mattresses, others lying lifeless in pools of blood. One victim looked like he had tried to crawl away before collapsing. There was no movement, no signs of life, just blood, silence, and shock. And Guy, he was spiraling. His hands shook, his legs felt weak. He didn't have his phone, and all he knew was that he had to find help. He searched desperately throughout the trailer, panic rising with every empty room he passed. Finally, he found one of Michelle's phones, but the battery was dead. His hands were shaking as he stumbled into another bedroom, still clinging to hope. What he saw there would haunt him forever. On the floor lay Russell Jr., lifeless. On the bed nearby was Michael, completely still, blood soaking into the sheets and splattered across the wall like a nightmare. A shotgun lay on the floor beside them, and in that moment, fear took over. What if the person who did this was still inside? Without thinking, he grabbed the shotgun, not to hide it or tamper with evidence, but to protect himself, to defend whatever was left. He was overwhelmed and unable to think straight, his body reacting on pure instinct. He ran out of the trailer, still clutching the gun, his thoughts swirling in a blur of shock and adrenaline. Reality felt twisted, like none of this could be happening. He threw the gun into the trunk, tossed the dead phone into the back seat, and sat in the car, shaking uncontrollably. At that point, Guy was already high, and the trauma only made his mind feel more foggy and disconnected. Maybe he thought he was too high, maybe this wasn't real. In that haze, he lit up another joint right there in Russell's car, hoping the smoke would dull the pain or bring some kind of calm. But no amount of marijuana could erase the blood, the silence, or the horror of what he'd seen. Then came the breakdown. He stepped outside again, screaming and crying, his voice cracking as he shouted, "My whole family is dead," over and over. His cries echoed through the trailer park, raw and desperate. One of the neighbors heard him and called 911 right away. If you listen to the recording, you can hear Guy's frantic, broken voice in the background repeating, "They're all dead, they're all dead." He ran back inside the trailer multiple times, desperate to help or find some kind of answer, until finally he shouted to the operator, "Tell them to hurry, Michael's still alive." By the time the police arrived, Guy was outside, throwing up next to a truck. He was drenched in sweat, pale, shaky, and clearly in shock. Officers described him as wide-eyed and lost, trembling and confused. The retching and trembling didn't look like the behavior of a cold-blooded killer. It looked like the reaction of someone who had just walked through hell and seen the unthinkable. And yet, everything changed just hours later. Instead of being comforted or treated like a survivor, Guy was arrested, just like that. One minute he was a grieving man overwhelmed with shock. The next he was the prime suspect in the most brutal crime the town had ever seen. No one else was seriously questioned or detained, only him. Then came the trial, which many now believe was full of holes, missing evidence, strange assumptions, and a theory that didn't make sense. The prosecution tried to spin a story that Guy, furious over missing painkillers, snapped and methodically beat 8 people to death with a blunt object in the dead of night. They claimed he did it quietly, leaving almost no evidence, and then showed up later acting like nothing had happened. But the story didn't add up. No one heard screams. No one heard a fight. There were no scratches or defensive wounds on Guy, no blood on him, no trail, no witnesses, no sign he cleaned up. And yet, despite all that, he was still convicted. District Attorney Jackie Johnson and her team celebrated it as a solid win. They believed they'd closed the chapter, locking up the man responsible for one of Georgia's most brutal family massacres. But cracks in that story started to form. Jody Sturt, who would later become Guy's wife, along with other justice advocates, began digging into the case. What they found wasn't just questionable, it was alarming. From the beginning, the case was circumstantial. Even the lead prosecutor, John Johnson, admitted that in court. "We don't have any evidence placing Guy Heinze Jr. at the crime scene during the murders," he told the jury, but they pushed ahead anyway, building the case on three basic things. Guy knew the victims, he used drugs, and he lived in the trailer. That was it. No eyewitnesses, no physical evidence, no confession, just assumptions. The Glynn County Police, led by Chief Matthew Doring, locked in on Guy almost immediately. He had found the bodies. He was the one who called for help. But instead of viewing him as a potential witness or even a victim, they treated him like the killer. One of the victims, Michael Toller, was still alive when Guy discovered the scene. Guy tried to help him, but Michael later died in the hospital. A toddler also survived, though with severe brain trauma. Neighbors who showed up after hearing Guy scream said he looked shocked, barefoot and clean. They didn't see blood on him. He wasn't acting suspicious. He told them to call 911, and yet officers decided he was lying. They said blood on his shorts was incriminating, but Guy insisted it got there when he checked on the bodies. That explanation made sense, but they didn't want to hear it. The way the evidence was handled only made things worse. There was blood in a bathroom that might have belonged to an injured killer. Police photographed it, but never tested or preserved it. Other critical evidence wasn't tested either, or it was thrown out. Even the stuff that was collected, barely a fraction of it was ever analyzed. Then there's the issue with Officer Mike Owens. He took Guy's clothes but didn't log them into evidence that night. Instead, he kept them overnight, breaking the chain of custody. Internal Affairs had already flagged Owens for this kind of behavior in past cases. So how reliable could any of that evidence really be? Police also ignored leads, some of them serious. There were tips about possible gang-related suspects, people who had motives and violent backgrounds. These leads weren't followed up on until much later, right before the trial. By then, too much time had passed. Witnesses were gone, memories had faded, and the defense had little to work with. During the trial, the state's story stood on shaky ground. They brought in witnesses like Thomas Williams, who had been asleep in another part of the trailer during the time of the murders. He didn't see or hear anything, yet his testimony was still used to help shape the timeline. It didn't make sense. The whole case leaned heavily on assumptions and guesswork. So, how did this turn into a life sentence? How did a young man with no criminal history of violence and no blood on his hands end up behind bars for life? This wasn't just a courtroom failure, it was a failure at every level. From the rushed investigation to the ignored leads, to the mishandling of evidence and the lack of real proof, everything pointed to a system more focused on closing the case than getting it right. Today, that conviction is being questioned more than ever. Advocates continue to fight for a re-examination of the evidence, and people who once believed Guy was guilty are starting to take a second look. Now, I really want to hear what you think. Do you believe Guy was innocent? After everything, the lack of hard evidence, the sloppy investigation, the ignored leads, do you think justice was really served here? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you've made it this far, be sure to check out this next video. I think you'll enjoy it. Thank you once again for watching.